It is Better Country 101.7 The Bull. Thanks you so much for joining us here on this Thursday. And we are joined today by a very special guest, a man that is going to be getting the holiday season off and rolling next week at the Legacy Theater in Carthage, as it's Randy Newman with Ozark Jubilee, part of a Branson Country Christmas that they are going to be celebrating next weekend. We'll get to more on that here in just a little bit. Randy, thanks for joining us. How are you doing this morning?
You bet. Doing great this morning. Thanks for having us on.
Absolutely. Hey, let's get into this here. Let's get to know you a little bit here. So when did your music journey get going? Have you been in the music world since a young kid? Did you have parents that were in the music world? How did you get your music world off and running?
Well, yes, my dad was a musician, had a band in my hometown, come to Silver Dollar City, right out of high school, got hired on there, had a band, joined up with one of the music shows, the original show in Branson, the Ball Knobbers. There was four brothers that had that, and one of them sold out and built a theater right across the street, called it the Bobble Links Country Hoedown, and I went to work there with Bob in 1977. And I've been here in Branson ever since.
And Branson, Missouri, for folks who know, maybe folks who don't even know, a big one in the music industry. We all hear about Nashville, we hear about Texas, we hear about those places. But what makes Branson so great, and what has kept you in Branson for that long?
Well, Branson's, I think they call it the live entertainment capital of the world. What intrigued me when I come here and I'd go see the shows, there's great country music, and I'm old, so I like old country music. George Jones, Merle Haggard, Patsy Cline, Tammy Wynette, and they had that kind of music, and they also had the old hillbilly humor. So, you go see a Nashville concert or, somebody from Nashville, it's their music, it's their, it's whatever you've heard on their records. But when you go to a Branson show, you see a total variety, and it's high energy entertainment. We have grandma and grandpa, mom and dad, and the grandkids. They like it because of the comedy, the entertainment value. And that's what kind of drew me to the area. And then we ended up owning this Ozark Jubilee show back in the early 90s. And then, of course, you're probably aware, hundreds and everybody and anybody came to Branson and went in a theater. Mel Tillis, Roy Clark, Mickey Gilley, Andy Williams.
Yeah.
It just goes on and on. And so we decided that'd be a good time for us to sell our theater and go out on the road. Because everybody else had to come in off the road and settle in Branson. So we've been doing that for a few years, and that seems to work out really good. And because anybody, and a lot of our audience is, 55 and older, and every one of those folks have either been to Branson or always wanted to go. So us coming to their hometown, it's like, it's a 30-mile drive instead of 600.
Yeah. Yeah, well,
anyway.
And you get a little taste of Branson, Missouri. You're bringing that taste up here for the Ozark Jubilee, the Branson Country Christmas. That's happening on November 2nd. We're pretty excited for that show. We'll talk a little bit more about that in just a little bit. By the way, we're talking with Randy Newman here of Ozark Jubilee. Let's talk a little bit, though, about your act. I mean, you do this thing. Your nickname, actually, on stage is Doofus Doolittle. Now, I got to know, where did that name come from? Is that somebody that you know? What's the story of Doofus Doolittle, and where did that come from?
Well, it's kind of a long story. I'll try to make it short. Partner, me and another fella, Richard Kennedy, we had a show, a matinee show in Branson back in 1990, and we had a comedian hired, and about 2 weeks prior to the show, he took another job, and at that time, there's not any comedians in town, And so my partner, Richard, said, well, why don't you do it? You're always acting like an idiot. And so I said, no, well, acting stupid is one thing, but actually being funny He said, oh, you could do it. So I decided, okay. So, and then when I was a kid and I'd mess up or do something stupid, Mom would always say, well, you doofus, quit that. You're such a doofus. So I thought, well, that was real appropriate.
Right.
So anyhow, my mom, I guess, responsible for that name. But, and anyhow, it kind of fits because this Doofus Doolittle guy, he's just a couple of bricks short.
Well, I love it. I love it. You've heard that name before, and you took it and you ran with it, and it's made you a pretty good career here. We're talking with Randy Newman, also known as Doofus Doolittle, for Ozark Jubilee here. They're going to be presenting a Branson Country Christmas on November 2nd in Carthage at the Legacy Theater. And let's talk a little bit about your act. I mean, you're a very funny guy, as we can hear with some of the stuff you've been talking about. So you're funny, you're a little comedian in there, but you also play the fiddle. How did you get started on the fiddle?
I took violin, some in high school, played in the orchestra, and a little bit in college, and so then I seen I couldn't make much money playing the violin, so I started playing the fiddle, and then I learned all the fiddle tunes, the Orange Blossom Special, and listened to the Mockingbird, Faded Love, all the tunes everybody likes. And then when I come to Branson, there was a Japanese guy come to town, Shoji Tabuchi. And before that, there was no what I would call classical type music in the shows, And Shoji started doing some of that, so that opened up a whole new world. So I thought, well, that classical training I'd had, I'll get to share a little bit of that now. So now, like in our first half, I do the comedy character, and I'll do tunes like Black Mountain Rag, Ragtime Annie, Orange Blossom Special. And then in the second half, we get serious, and we do all of our Christmas songs in the second half, a variety, old ones, new ones, and then I get to do like Oh Holy Night and some violin-type music in the second half, so I get to do that. And the band and the singers in the group are just incredible. I've worked with all the old acts, and you or your audience may not be aware of all of them, like Porter Wagner, Roy Clark, Ray Price. All of those guys I've got to work with over the years.
Wow.
And these guys in this Ozark Jubilee band are as good as anywhere.
Well, hey, that's pretty exciting stuff. We're talking with Randy Newman from Ozark Jubilee here on 101.7 The Bull. And let's talk a little bit then. You kind of are going to lead into this next question here. So you've gotten to work with some of those big names. Which of those artists stuck out? Which one do you remember working for the most? And really, you remember a lot of the stuff that made a big impact on your career?
Well, a funny thing is we were dirt poor, when I was a kid. And so, we're out on a farm, and we're working 10 or 12, 14 hours a day. And the big event for us was Saturday night or Saturday afternoon, starting about 3 o'clock. All those old shows come on. Nashville on the Road, the Best in Nashville, Porter Wagner Show, Hee Haw. And, boy, those guys were my heroes. And I feel so blessed over the last 40, almost 50 years. I've got to work with almost all of those guys. And every one of them had something special. Roy Clark, the way he comes across on the Hee Haw Show and all that, he's just as nice a guy. We did several shows together with Roy and just sitting and visiting. And, he's just such a super guy. He even showed me a tune or two on the guitar. I told him, I said, Roy, the way you play that one song, that 12th Street Rag, I said, boy, that's the best I've ever heard. I said, I wish I knew that. He said, well, and we're on the bus traveling from Milwaukee over to St. Cloud, Minnesota. And he said, well, if you got a guitar, I'll show it to you. So that was kind of cool. And
Wow.
then I guess probably and then Ray Price never said much. My gosh, though, what a singer.
Yeah.
He was a guy, he could come out and sing 2 hours straight, never say a word, never make a joke or anything, and the crowd just sat in awe. But I guess probably of all of them, the highlight would have been Porter Wagner.
Yeah.
I watched Porter, and I always thought it was so cool, those clothes he dressed in and the sparkles and stuff. And I just thought, and there's probably better singers, but Porter, when I met him, was such a nice guy, and we immediately just clicked, I guess. And so he had me on the Grand Ole Opry, center stage, 4,400 people, sold out crowd, 3 standing ovations. And I said, boy, Porter, I'd give anything to have one of them suits. He said, well, I'll introduce you to the guy. So I went over a day early when I was going to be on the Opry, and he took me down, and Manuel is the guy. It used to be they called him Nudie suits, and that guy named Nudie, and I always thought that was kind of vulgar when they'd say, well, I'm wearing a Nudie suit. So, but it was actually, that was his name, and then his son-in-law took over once, he was gone, and his name was Manuel, and he lived there in Nashville. Porter took me over and introduced me, and I had him make me a couple of suits. And then Porter just took me around, introduced me to everybody. And when he told me at one of the shows we were doing, he said, I'd like to, I'm going to get you over there on the Opry, And I said, well, that'd be great, just thinking that, well, these guys just say stuff, And so I asked his band, and I said, said about getting me on the Opry. I said, was he just messing with me? And they said, no. He said, if Porter Wagner tells you there's a $100,000 check in the mail, I'd be there checking my mailbox every day because it's coming. So anyhow, but all of them, every one of them had something different that was impressive. Mel Tillis, I worked quite a bit with Mel. I was his booking agent for about a year and a half, and what a great entertainer. Always had a great band. But anyhow, so it's been a glorious life for me, I can tell you.
Yeah, not a lot of people get to work with their idols, and you've gotten the chance to do that. That's pretty awesome. We're talking with Randy Newman of Ozark Jubilee. One last question here, Randy, before we let you go. We're excited for your show coming up on November 2nd at the Legacy Theater in Carthage. Celebrating Christmas, getting the holiday season off and rolling, and then you're also doing a little bit of honoring those troops. It's going to be a pretty special show. Why don't we talk a little bit about that?
Okay, yes. Like I was saying, the first half of our show, we'll do country variety. And when I say country, it's the old country stuff. Jones, Haggard, Patsy Cline, Fair and Young, that kind of stuff, and lots of comedy. And then the whole second half is our Christmas, Branson Country Christmas. That'll be all Christmas music. And in the middle of that, we stop, recognize, and pay tribute to our veterans. And we realize, especially a guy needs to be aware nowadays, and with everything else that's going on, we realize how special those people are. And so we take time in every show and recognize and pay tribute to our veterans. And, that seems to be one of the highlights of the show.
Well, hey, we're looking forward to seeing that in person there coming up on November 2nd. Details at the Legacy Theater's website. And we look forward to seeing him here. Randy Newman from Ozark Jubilee, also known as Doofus Doolittle, joining us here this morning. Randy, we appreciate the time. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
You bet. Thanks for having us on. And everybody come out and see us. We'll look forward. We'll be there. I think it's a 2 o'clock show. And we'll look forward to seeing everybody.